and you already have heard a little bit about Aurobindo, with his vast vision of the eternal and the transformation of the human body, and the mother, bringing about this community of Auroville, which goes through its hard times, but then comes through again. And so they're also contenders for the Wisdom Prize. And Radhakrishnan, I won't say much, but a wonderful philosopher. He was ambassador to Moscow, ambassador to the UN, founder of universities. So his knowledge definitely led to action. Then, of course, there is the amazing, the totally incomprehensibly wise, wholly pure, patient Dalai Lama, going through day after day with his country disappearing and the nuns being tortured and people suffering, etc. So that's just, it's good to just meditate just on who he is. If you want to know about wisdom, there it is. So I finished with a section on, I wanted to leave a half hour for questions, and I am. Steiner is the one who teaches the joining of thinking, feeling, and willing, and I did not write my characterization of wisdom with him or that in mind, but if you look, it has knowledge arising in love and leads to action, which is, if you know the Bhagavad Gita, that the Jnana Yoga is knowledge, Bhakti Yoga is love, and Karma Yoga is action. They're also the three disciplines that Steiner recommends, thinking, feeling, and willing, as the key to spiritual life in our time. We need thinking, which is an act of love, which then leads to right action. So I do, it was very unconscious, and there it came out again. I've always, somebody told me very early on that it's very important to know at least one thinker very well. I've noticed retrospectively that I've been doing that, trying to learn one thinker very well, and Stein is the one I know best. So even when I'm not thinking of him at all, I write something and I say, oh yeah, that's in Philosophy of Freedom, that's in that lecture, that's in that book, etc., etc. So these things, they come out of the unconscious. So this is a worldview and a path that joins this is his characterization of Anthropos Sophia. Anthroposophy, his spiritual path. It joins the spiritual in the universe to the spiritual in the individual to the spiritual in the universe. Okay, so presupposes and emphasizes the real individual in the real world. I put that in because I'm always surprised at people who talk about the mind as though it isn't met by anything. Like there's no world out there. Or who talk about, in a kind of a naive realism, which is the actual name of a real school of philosophy, associated with G.E. Moore, that there is really only, that I shouldn't put it that way, that the world is so real that our participation doesn't actually affect the out there, which both of these positions seem to me epistemologically naive, when it's so clear that all the action is in the between the thinking and the world, the universe, whatever, and that they are not. They can be strategically separated, but not really separated. Okay, so I'm recommending a participatory epistemology, which means participate. It also means show up. Chop wood, carry water, etc. And that it is now possible, again, to do this in relation to Sophia, or at least to Sophianic thinking, which is highly participatory and creative, regenerative. The Sophia, if you read the Baring and Cashford, Sophia and all these goddesses were all regenerators. They all brought the crops back again. They were under, and it came back again, right? So that was their great function. All right, their great capacity. So it's a worldview. Anthropos Sophia is the ideal human and the ideal divine feminine knowing. and it could lead to the recovery of philosophy in the West. Not that I think that's an end in itself, but since people continue to do philosophy, it'd be good if some of us brought it about that they did it better. Now, if philosophy were to disappear, I think we could manage with all of these other disciplines that would kind of fill in, which is to some extent happening. You can learn a lot more philosophy from some non-philosophers than you, certainly more philosophy that you'd want to learn from some non-philosophers than from many philosophers. But it would be really good if we could reform philosophy. This program, in conclusion, is called philosophy because we're very philosophical, even when we're not teaching philosophy. And we're trying to use philosophy to reform these other areas, cosmology and consciousness. And that then, if done well, will spill back and transform philosophy. But that's why we need you to keep coming and get really, really smart. Okay, so I have time for questions, comments, objections, confusions. Shelley.
Something's been, in all of this, we haven't mentioned Islam, which is a big issue right now.
It is big.
Big cultural phenomenon. What is the role of Sophia in Islam? I mean, it seems like the roots of Islam was Ishtar and Inanna, and it was a big deal 3,000 years ago.
That's good, absolutely.
Has it just gone below the radar? Is it in Sufism? Or?
I think, from what I know, which isn't very expert, or expert at all, that everything is going on in Islam at the present time. Lots of recovery. It guns the complete range from the beautiful Sufi mystic traditions to hardcore, fundamentalism, etc. As far as I can tell, that's also the range of Christianity and Judaism. And the big problem is nobody can control the right wing. The people are driven by fear and reduction and nothing but our rights, our whatever else. They have more power than the whole rest of the tradition. And so in Islam, there is this beautiful tradition that continues. And it is also being overwhelmed internally and in terms of relationship with the rest of the world by the fear-driven and angry. And people don't usually get that angry if they've been well treated. So Islam is what I know best, I guess, is from Karen Armstrong's The Battle for God, which is about 450 pages of these three traditions mistreating each other. But of course, Islam has had a lot of power, Christianity has had a lot of power, and the Jews have had almost no power. So it's not an even trio. But it's not even that even between Islam and the West either, because the West has always had the Christian or post-Christian, really. It started out Christian anti-Muslim, then it became basically economic. What happened with Christianity is that it became capitalism in terms of international relations. So that was really what was going on, basically land and oil. It's a big topic. I wish I knew more. We all need to know more.
Are there any academics writing, Islamic academics writing about Sophia in any way, or the need to?
That's a good question. Jake, do you know the answer to that? Are there Muslim academics writing about Sophia?
Sophia plays a part in some of the sort of Sufi philosophical traditions, and shows up, I think, in Mullah Shadra and Ibn Arabi, and there's a huge amount of scholarship on those folks. And there's a connection with some of the stream you're talking about through kind of Korban-inspired retrievals of Islam, but those are one half Swedenborg, one half Islam, so it's a kind of mix there.
Yeah. So it's all the Sufi tradition. Korban, C-O-R-B-I-N, Korban, C-O-R-B-I-N. And I never pronounced the title of the book. It's a complicated title. What is it?
You mean the one
Korban.
in Arabic?
Yeah. No, okay. I read about a third of it. Beautiful. I just never got around to finishing it. Yeah.
The huge, beautiful Hagia Sophia. That's an Islamic name, Hagia Sophia?
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
So obviously it was an important thing.
That's actually an Orthodox. It was the center of Orthodox Christianity, but after Constantinople was taken, and no longer an Orthodox center.
So they
Hagia
named it.
Sophia has been preserved there, though. But it was the Orthodox who named it Hagia Sophia.
These are very good questions for which we need more expertise than exists in this program and I think in the school. And I'm frequently in a conversation. What are we going to do about Islam? What are we going to do about Islam? Yeah, and we just need to fill that out. And we don't have a Jewish scholar either. We have Jewish faculty, but we don't have a scholar of Judaism in the entire 72-member faculty. Very interesting. Yes.
Well, I was just wondering, like, I guess to the best of my knowledge, I know, like, in ancient Egypt, that Isis was typically represented with her sister, like Nephthys, I think is how you pronounce it. And, like, Isis is kind of, I guess, seen as, like, the worldly body Gaia figure, whereas Nephthys was kind of like the transition into the afterlife kind of thing, but I never hear anything about it, or like, you know, whereas they were represented together typically, usually Isis is brought out and like talking about these kind of things, and I was just curious as to why, if you knew anything about that.
Don't know about that.
I don't either.
Can I just suggest an answer? Because it's a 3,000-year period, the myths go through changes, and I think the period where Isis gets really emphasized, especially with the child, the mother Isis, is in the later period where Isis goes all over the Mediterranean, is not just located in the tribes of Egypt. And I'm thinking that's probably around the axial period that Isis temples go all over through northern Europe, and that's when we see.
So through Western influence, probably, that's
Well,
like highlighted, I guess, maybe?
It's tough to say
Yeah, right,
what they
right.
needed in their goddesses. But I mean, she has so many faces, and it's because she, the time periods are really long, and also the locations, they're all different. So it just depends where you're getting your myths from.
And we also, depending on which period we are, we want to choose our language. For example, it's not clear what Western means, since there's Egypt, right? It's just right there, right on the right in the middle of the Mediterranean. And Islam, what people think of as far away. Well, that's because there are millions of Muslims in India and in Indonesia, but in fact, Islam comes right out of the same Mediterranean world, and Plato and Aristotle and Abraham. So it's not Asian. It's definitely Middle Eastern. As of course, I was in Jerusalem in May. It is clear that every step you make, it's Jewish, Christian, or Muslim. Just right there, all in that exact same place.